UNDP based in Hong Kong. And I'm very much looking forward to this session together, which was actually quite fun for me to prepare. So I'm very happy to be connected with you all. We had the same workshop yesterday, actually, for our colleagues in Asia. And today we're connecting with Europe and America. As I mentioned just before, this webinar will be recorded. So if you are not able to attend the full 90 minutes together, we will share the link, the presentation to everyone. And as I mentioned also, please put your video if you're comfortable with that, and the name of your organization near your name. So in this 90 minutes together, we're gonna do a role play. Don't be scared. Usually people run off when we say we're gonna do a role play, but that's gonna be fun. And we basically gonna explore the new, newly launched UNDP Farmer Support Tool that normally you should have received a copy in the invite to this webinar. And it's a guidance that we developed to strengthen the existing farmer support systems that you might have in your respective countries, but using specifically the lens of multi-stakeholder collaboration, as well as system change approach. So how do we use multi-stakeholder collaboration and system change to create a safe space for stakeholders to create innovative solutions on farmer support? Next slide, please. So we have 90 minutes. We're gonna do a check-in. I'm gonna then introduce the role play and the context for it. Next slide, Matthias. Then we're gonna actually do an assessment of existing farmer support system in the fictional Republic of Combesi. I suppose none of you have been to Combesi. So we're gonna do that exercise together. And then we're gonna start co-creating what a farmer support collective action plan could be for that fictional Republic of Combesi. Matthias, can I have the next slide? The next one. Showing a bit slowly, yeah. All right, so we always like to start with check-in, not jumping straight into technical content. We don't like to jump straight into technical content. So we're gonna do a little check-in to relax, get to know each other a bit better, and having the opportunity to connect with the group and be more present and forget what's in our mind in this particular moment. So we have 3 minutes each, the slide before, Matthias. And we're gonna do a breakout rooms in pairs. And basically the idea is to introduce yourself. And I don't see the previous slide. Which slide are you seeing? The check-in or the one after?
Yeah, we see the check-in now.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, I'm seeing another one. Yeah, so if you can introduce yourself briefly, just your name and your organization, but then if you could describe a great experience that you have had lately. Can be both personal or professional. You know, in these difficult and uncertain times of COVID, I think it's great to be reminded sometimes of the good things that we are experiencing and happening to us, if any, in 2020. And then when you come back, I'm going to ask you to write in the chat box what attracted you to join this webinar today. So Matthias, if you can put us in the breakout rooms, 3 minutes each. You can use a timer to be sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to speak. And then we'll reconnect in 6 minutes.
Yes, just allow me 1 minute while I set up.
Yeah. And for those who just joined now, yes, put your video if you can, and then put your name next, your organization next to your name. So we know who's in the room. So you have a bit extra time to think about a great experience that you've had. You put a smile on your face normally if you think about it.
Carolina, no se te escucha muy bien. No sé si estás con... El micrófono está como tapado.
Pero
Ay, ahora sí mejor.
sí puedo.
A ver.
Aló.
Aló. Sí, súper.
Ah, ya.
No,
Sí.
sí, Carolina, yo no... sí, te quedaste solita, así que vas a hacer el check-in conmigo.
Ya. Bueno, buenos
Cuéntame...
días.
Sí, cuéntame.
Carolina de la Rosa. Ah, voy a poner mi video, es que estaba justo peinándome. Así que estoy ahí. ¿Se me ve?
Sí, súper bien.
Ya. Bueno, introduce, ya tú me conoces, Carolina de la Rosa, trabajo en el proyecto PPS con temas de políticas y una gran experiencia, ¿no? Que hayamos tenido hasta ahora desde, en esta época de COVID.
Ajá.
Bueno,
Sí,
creo que no, como no he salido de mi casa. Bueno, pues es kind of buena experiencia, pero creo que el COVID me ha permitido a través de los Teams Groups.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Is everyone back, Matthias? Yeah, I think so. Cool. So thank you for sharing your story. And if you can just take 1 minute to write in the chat box what attracted you to join this webinar. If you are working on farmer support somewhere or you have a particular interest, so we know a bit and let us know why are you joining today. You can read at the same time what everyone's writing. My connection is a bit slow in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, we have some issues where I live. So sometimes I'm disconnected, which is not good when you are the facilitator. Worked with farmers for 30 years and always keen to learn more. Excellent. To learn something that I haven't had time to read about, working with palm oil in Liberia, experience farmer support for cocoa farmers, working in several African countries, want to learn about how to help farmers. So learning, excellence. If you can put the next slide, Matthias, and you continue reading in the chat box, Sustainable Landscape Project in Peru. We have people from various countries here today, on the ground work, etc. So reinventing farmer support systems for the 2030 agenda. You might wonder why this title for the workshop today and why UNDP developed this guidance. Can I ask Kathleen, can you read for me the quote that you see on the slides from the UN Secretary General?
It is abundantly clear that a much deeper, faster, and more ambitious response is needed to unleash the social and economic transformation needed to achieve our 2030 goals.
Thank you. So basically, you're all familiar with the 2030 agenda, but it includes 17 SDGs, each representing complex systems, such as climate, food, health, cities, that have a myriad of stakeholders. And if you want to achieve progress on the 2030 agenda, we need to have a departure from top-down linear approach to change, and we need to bring in innovative and adaptive approach that can engage this broad network of world system groups, if you want, towards a shared vision for system change. And so the guidance, you can see the cover on the right. The one that you received is 2 documents. There's a guidance, which is the main text, and there's a scorecard that I'm going to explain. It's basically interested to how we can bring those innovative and collaborative and adaptive approach on the ground to the particular case of farmer support systems, so that we can improve livelihoods and protect ecosystems. So we launched that document in April on Earth Day, actually, and we shared it widely internally and externally. Next slide. So you've heard a lot about system change, myself today already in the presentation, but I think this has received a lot more attention also recently in the context of COVID, basically showing that everything is interconnected. And we all want to collaborate, we all want to improve the farmer support systems so that they can grow more sustainably, they can adapt to climate change, they can stop deforestation. We all have very good intentions, lots of experience and lots to offer. But what does it mean exactly to work more systemically, and how you can apply these concepts in the particular case of farmer support? So in this diagram, you can see like 3 key elements. One is understanding the system. The other one is convening. And the third one is the ways of working. And the guidance that we prepare on farmer support is basically aiming to guide you through these different elements. How can you convene stakeholders around the issue of farmer support? What framework can you use to understand the system, to assess the system and strengthen? And more importantly, what ways of working are also needed to bring the collaborative mindsets and values that you need to transform those systems? So beyond just focusing on the technical content, like how do you train a farmer? How do you improve the capacity of an extension worker, which are fundamental and essential, is how do you add to that what ways of working are needed at the same time. So instead of me presenting you the entire guidance, what we're going to do is doing that role play, where you are going to experience some of the collaborative activities that we are proposing in the guidance. So it's really not a guidance about the best methodologies to train farmers, but really how you can strengthen the overall system and its funding. All right, next slide. Can you hear me well? Yeah, connection not too bad. So welcome to the Farmer Support Forum of the fictional Republic of Combesi. You can see in our forum, so we're going to play that role. You're all going to play the role of either a farmer, a government official, private sector, or civil society. You can see a list of the stakeholders that are part of the forum today. And I need to give you a bit of context as we are going to play the roles of these different categories. So the first export of the Republic of Combesi is cocoa. Yeah, I suppose you all know cocoa. It's a very strategic crop. And our focus today as a collective is sustainable cocoa production, climate change adaptation, and deforestation. That's what we are aiming for as a group. And in the Republic of Combesi, there is 3 service providers providing support to farmers. There is the Cocoa Commodity Board, that is from the government. We have a cocoa company, and we have NGOs as well. And they all have different priorities, strengths, and weaknesses. The next slide. So this is our first meeting together. We've established the country forum, and the guidance that we developed proposed 4 stages to convene stakeholders around the issue of farmer support. One is preparing, of course, but an assessment, and then a collaborative decision-making, and then a joint implementation. And so today we've already, you can see in the assessment, there's two things. There's a study and a scorecard. We've already done a quantitative study that has been already completed, providing us background information on the performance of the farmer support system in Kambezi. And now we need to conduct together qualitative assessments using the scorecard that was developed by UNDP. So before we do that assessment together online, I need to share with you a few results from that quantitative study. Remember, it's all fictional, it's a role play. Put yourself already in the shoes of who you want to be. Do you want to be the government? It's exciting. Do you want to be the private sector? Or do you want to be a cocoa farmer? Next slide. So what we developed into the guidance is an analytical framework that is basically guiding those different stages that's just mentioned. And this analytical framework is allowing you to look at farmer support systems by looking at 15 different elements. You can see, for example, it's taking into account the enabling environments, what is shaping the context of your interventions, the organizational capacity, you know, what's the availability of extensionists, the training experience, the performance incentives, what type of training methods you're using, how it's delivered, what technologies you are using, budgeting and financing, how is it funded, the farmer support systems, what's the allocation, M&E and learning, how do you measure the adoption of farmers of using more sustainable practices, for example. And the guidance that you receive basically providing details on each of those issues to be investigated. So we don't have time today to look in all the details, but basically if you look into the document on vision, for example, it will show you what to look at. And so the quantitative study will look at that, the assessment will look at that. And this is being built on previous work conducted by other expert organizations on strengthening extension and advisory systems. So we use that framework to do our own study for the Republic of Kambezi. All right, next slide. And we discover a number of things. First, we realized that the three service providers are very different priorities and different strengths and weaknesses, if you want. The Cocoa Commodity Board is really interested in increasing productivity. And one of their key strengths is that they have a very strong regulatory framework. The private sector, they're really interested in the volume and the quality of the cocoa that is being purchased. And in terms of strength, they recently developed an action plan on cocoa and deforestation, for example. The NGOs, they're really interested in the number of farmers trained, and their focus is improving livelihoods, and their strength is that they are very good trainers, for example. So again, this is all fictional. You might not see that as the reality of the country you're operating with if you work on palm oil or cocoa in your respective countries. But overall, the study showed that there is misaligned interest, agenda, there's no common, there's no shared understanding of the key issues to be addressed, for example. And productivity is very low. You can see on the slide, on the left is 350 kilograms per hectare, and on the right is you can basically increase tenfold your productivity of cocoa to 3,500 kilograms per hectare. So there's a lot of potential for improving your system. Next slide. So,
Nicolas?
Yeah?
Sorry, you just mentioned a couple of numbers, but I didn't see those. Was it
it's
me?
not on the slide.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not on the slide.
Okay.
It's just to say that there is a huge potential for increasing productivity. Yeah.
Okay, clear. Thanks.
So the study highlights also that the current situation in the Republic of Kambezi is actually one of coexistence and competition. As for other sectors, there are many things that get in the way of collaboration for strengthening farmer support system. There's lots of competition, there's lots of egos, people are working in silos, there's duplications of efforts. And specifically on cocoa, And sustainable cocoa encompasses this training material for farmers that are being produced separately by the private sector, the government, and the NGOs on same topics. And sometimes we are reinventing a training material from 10 years ago, but with a new trendy words or concept. You know, now it's climate smart cocoa, but before we were doing something else. And if you look at the slides, you can see that you know, what is competing, what is coexisting. But Margaret, can you read, for example, what is on the collaborate?
Just the text, you mean?
Can you read collaborate?
Longer, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, longer team interaction based on shared mission goals, also shared decision-making and resources.
Yeah, so we are very far from that, and we're still competing for clients and resources. Next slide. I'm gonna pass that quickly. Basically, we also realized during that study that there's a very low level of trust between those three service providers, if you want. The perception from the stakeholders when we done the interview is that institutions are serving the interest of a few over everyone. And each institution is not seen as a good partner for the other. However, as you can see the quotes, change happens at the speed of trust, but there's no trust between the service provider. Next slide. And finally, as part of all the things we've learned from that quantitative study, we learned that in addition to the need for stronger collaboration, system thinking can also help us develop stronger farmer support systems. And you can see here, you know, how the farm is connected to infrastructure, transport, market, government, knowledge, climate, culture, innovation, and so on and so on. So how we can understand that complexity. And for you to get a sense of how can we understand that complexity, we have a small 4 minutes video to show you. And then we're gonna go into the actual exercise. Matthias, can you put the video?
Yes, 1 second.
If you have any questions or if I'm going too fast, please use the chat box and I can slow down.
This animation is about systems thinking and what it means for our work. We hope it encourages you to look deeper into the accompanying guide. Traditionally, we have been encouraged to solve problems by focusing on and developing solutions to individual parts of a problem. A log frame or a theory of change, for instance, encourages us to map out a tidy sequence of change that will solve developmental problems.
But reality is rarely as simple as that. To illustrate this, consider the old saying, if you teach a man to fish, you can feed him forever. First of all, it's just as likely that that man is a woman, of course.
Many factors may mean that the simple activity of training someone to fish will not be enough to give them a livelihood. Climate change could be affecting the availability of fish. Pollution from urban areas could be killing the fish. Rich elites could be using illegal nets, leading to overfishing. A lack of control over household income could limit the benefit obtained by women fishers. Irrigation for agricultural development could threaten water resources.
On the other hand, many factors could open up new opportunities. A company may open up a new fish processing plant. Demand for fish may grow from expanding urban areas. The reality for the fisherman or fisherwoman is that their livelihood is determined by how well they can manage these challenges and opportunities, which may change every year. When you examine any of these issues separately, you will see that they themselves are made up of an interaction of many different factors. Consider pollution. There are obvious causes, but underneath these, there could be another set of causative factors. And there could be conditions that help this to happen. Now consider how uneven power develops. Pollution may perpetuate poverty in a number of ways, and in doing so, it may contribute to diminishing the influence and power that people have, going full circle and further reinforcing the problem of pollution. You can unpack any of the problems facing the fishermen in the same way, and you will find a similar complex web of stakeholders and issues that interact with each other.
These factors and the way they relate to each other is a system. As you can see, systems can get quite complicated. In the case of the fisherwomen, for instance, what issue would make the biggest difference? Is it improving household decision-making? Is it curbing pollution? Is it improving the capacity of women? Or should the target be reducing women's time poverty? Or improving government policy? Or addressing climate change?
Things definitely seemed simpler and more certain when we just trained fishermen. But without an understanding of the bigger picture, it is easier for us to make mistakes. It's easier for us to develop interventions that have no impact, and it's easier for us to set off a chain of events that actually has a negative impact. But there are strategies we can adopt that enable us to design effective programs even in the face of such complex systems. First of all, we should make an effort to understand the systems we are dealing with. This will not give total certainty, but it will give us ideas about how to start, and it will reduce the chances of unintended consequences.
Starting small scale is important. Developing a range of interventions that allows us to test theories about what will happen when we intervene helps us deal with uncertainty. Many of our interventions will fail, but that helps us understand how the system works and increases our ability, long-term, to have greater impact. Working with other stakeholders allows different skill sets and ideas to be brought to bear on a problem. It allows you to operate at different levels of the system.
Working with others also enables you to challenge your own preconceived ideas. So bring in people who challenge your perception on what is happening. Don't just pick the people you usually work with. Working in this way takes time and good facilitation, but it can lead to changes in power dynamics and structural change.
To make this succeed, we have to work differently. This requires us to learn how to fail quickly, safely and purposefully, and let go of preconceived ideas. This means loosening our control over things, to be prepared to adapt as things go along. Our role then is to create space and opportunities for local stakeholders to design solutions. To find out more, take a look at the Systems Thinking Guide that accompanies this animation. It'll give you more ideas, examples, and links to other resources.
Thank you. So you can see in this video, well, last time we did a webinar on farmer support, someone said, is it only for agriculture, also for fishermen? So we managed to find a video about fishermen. But you can see in this video that they are way forward to work with complexity, uncertainty, if you have, strong facilitation, a collaborative mindsets, if you can letting go of control and experiment, etc. Next slide. So now you know, hopefully, that collaboration is important for strengthening farmer support system, and system thinking also can help us. So we're going to play the role now of the stakeholders in the country forum, and we're going to use Mentimeter. If you can raise your hand if you already use Mentimeter. Do you know Mentimeter? Yes. All right. Some do know, some others don't. We're gonna use Mentimeter to present the scorecard that is coming with the guidance from UNDP. And basically that scorecard is a qualitative exercise that is complementing the study, and that you conduct usually during a specific meeting of the forum. And it's basically 60 questions that are structured around the analytical framework that I presented. We're not going to do the 60 questions together. We're just going to do 4 or 5 for you to get a sense of how the system, the exercise is working. So if you can go to menti.com, you can see on the slide the website, and you can put the access codes 65, what is it? No, I cannot read. 66 94 45. All right, and Matthias, if you can share the slides. Yeah, so 64, 66, 94, 45. All right, let's see how many people. All right, so you can put which organization you're representing, and that's the role you're going to play for the rest of the exercise. So if you put government, you have to go into a mindset of governments. If you put cocoa farmers, you're a cocoa farmer. Yeah. All right. Let me see in full screen. How many people we have? 14, and we 21. So if you don't understand how to connect, let us know in the chats and we can connect you. So I'm very happy to see that we have a multi-stakeholder country support forum. It's a good balance. We have cocoa farmers, 25%, government, 20%, private sector, 20%, civil society. So it's pretty good. You know, if you want to have a successful forum, you need to have a good balance of stakeholders. And I think today we're not that bad. It's too small for me to see, but it looks pretty good to me in terms of colors. All right, next slide. Remember which role you are playing. All right, so, you know, you remember the analytical framework that I presented, the 60 questions around the enabling environment, the advisory methods, the M&E system for your farmer support system, the financing. So we're just going to test together a few questions. So do you think there's a, in the Republic of Combesi, do you think there's a level of shared vision for national extension services on cocoa? Is it no, it's very limited, satisfactory, it's good. And so the beauty here is that you can see who is responding what. So first it's anonymous. So that means that people that are usually shy to speak their truth, you know, like if they agree or not with the government, here they can say, there's no name, there's just your category of stakeholders. So you can see, for example, again, it's too small for me to see on the screen, but cocoa farmers think it's no or very limited. And then limited is, I cannot see the color, but it's, let's say it's the government. So there's different perception between the government and the cocoa farmers on the performance of your system. And so here in the reality, the facilitator will then, that will generate a discussion and a debate about what do we think about the vision for national extension services? Well, you know, is there any comments and how can we strengthen it, you know? And so this is based on the pilot that we did in Indonesia last year, where people, you know, were a bit shy to speak in the cultural context of Indonesia, to speak what they were thinking, and having an anonymous way of doing that was also providing more data. Next slide. Do you think there's SDG objectives being included in that vision beyond productivity? Is this extension system, farmer support system, all about productivity, or it's looking also at other aspects? So here we have very different views. Some people put very good and other put no, not at all. And so again, we can see with the colors, what's this difference? So maybe the person that thinks it's really good can explain to the group, it's me actually who put really good, you know, you can explain to the group, why is it really good? You know, why do I think that the SDG objectives are well integrated? And then the person, the group who said no can also explain their perspective. Next slide. We're gonna go a bit faster now that you understand the system. Is there a national curriculum to train farmers on sustainable commodity production practices? So for example, there's different training material, but there's nothing at national level yet in Peru on cocoa or on palm oil in Indonesia, but here we're in the Republic of Combesi. So again, there's an outlier that thinks that we have a fantastic national curriculum. Maybe it's the person who wrote it, but all the others think it's crap, basically. So, you know, again, generating a discussion around that. And the way this tool is done, it's not obviously in a webinar in 5 minutes. You know, it can take an entire day to go through 60 questions and have facilitation around it. Next slide. And is the frequency of training provided to farmers adequate enough for farmers to adopt sustainable practices? Remember to play the role that you put in the beginning. You're cocoa farmers, you're very happy with the training you receive, or not. All right, again, very diverse views. You guys are getting faster and faster. That's really good. Next slide. And the farmers have access to inputs like fertilizer, credit, seeds, shade trees. Do you think it's adequate or not? So again, this is just for you to test the system. We have similar questions on financing, on M&E, on all the components of the farmer support systems. And it's very qualitative, as you can see. You know, it's not like quantitative indicator, but it's for the group to get a shared understanding of what do we feel as a group of the level of performance. And usually you assess the system of all the service providers together because you're interested to change the system for the country or subnational level. Next slide. And are we making use of information technology like a mobile phone app in support of extension activities? Yeah, good point on color coding. Kathleen, you're asking the questions from the Farmer Support System survey, right? So yeah, we're doing a role play on the scorecards that we've developed, which is, you know, in a fictional place, what will be those questions? So you're doing yourself that scorecard.
Yeah, I was just realizing that these are the actual questions off the survey itself. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the actual real questions of the scorecards. Next one. All right, so you've seen a few questions on advisory methods. You think there's limited use of technology. Do you have any recommendations for strengthening as a group? You know, take 1 minute to think.
For strengthening Nicola farmer support systems, generally?
No, sorry, for strengthening advisory methods. So based on the question you've seen, like there's no national curriculum, or maybe there is, there's no information technology, the frequency of training, specifically on the advisory methods, do you have any specific recommendations, for example? Work more closely with national extension services or have private sector finance this. More money for more training, more pertinence to livelihoods, more concrete training, more continuous monitoring needed on good agricultural practices, better use of digital training tools, so more convenience, more funding opportunities, increased co-finance opportunities. So this scorecard, while it's subjective, is also the first step in terms of identifying what could be improved for the different elements of the analytical framework. So you just start that discussion in the forum. You know, we can, okay, we want to make increased co-finance opportunities. Then you dig deeper. What does it mean? Do participatory research with farmers. What does it mean? What we can do around that, etc. Next slide. So just a quick check-in. Are you still with me? And do you have a clear understanding of how these scorecards work so far by doing that, that role play? I'm going a bit fast, but I can see that you're still with me. Most of you. Did I lose everybody on the way? Tell me in chat box. So you're still with me and you have pretty okay understanding of how the scorecard is working. Basically, you can do that scorecard on an annual basis, which is a kind of, the first year you do it is a kind of a baseline situation. You know, out of those 60 questions, that's the performance of my system. And after 1 year, after implementing a few things, you come back and you say, how are we doing after 1 year on the performance of a system? And you can see how the score is evolving, for example. Okay, we're gonna go back to the presentation. And we're gonna do a pause for a moment in terms of feedback. Next slides. So if you can pause for 1 minute or two to reflect. And if you can write in the chat box one thing that you liked or didn't like about that exercise on Mentimeter and on the scorecards. The point here is not really Mentimeter, is the scorecard. And one question that you have about what you have heard so far, if any, you know, if you're completely lost or you don't know where this is going, or you have a specific question, what did you like about what we've done so far? If you can pause for 1 minute and write that in the chat box. I wonder how easily this Mentimeter can be used in country without internet connections and people access to internet. Yeah, so this Mentimeter is not, is only one way, is a collaborative tool, but there's many other tools you can use. And it's just to show you how to use the scorecard, but you can do it it doesn't have to be virtual. You can do it in a workshop, in a more traditional workshop in Liberia, where you have a facilitator that go through these questions, facilitate a discussion, etc. You can do a survey monkey by email. There's so many ways around doing that. I think the tool you're using is not so important. I mean, here it's interesting because it's anonymous, but it's not the most important. I think the interesting part is how the performance is assessed collectively, qualitatively. So yeah, the anonymity can bring honesty. How sure do you get that in a room without Mentimeter? Yeah, so for example, in Indonesia, we've done it with SurveyMonkey by email because we needed to bring the anonymous, it had to be anonymous. And, but you know, you need the interaction, you need also the human interaction. So you need to balance based on your particular context in your particular country. It's very much depending on culture and situations. But the point here with the guidance is that whenever you do a performance assessment of your system, you want to do it collaboratively. And this is a tool to help you bring people together on that shared understanding. Yeah, good way of dealing with power dynamics, getting equal voice heard. You know, usually when you go to those meetings, you're 40 in a farmer support forum, you have 4 people that's going to talk all the time. You know, the big egos are going to take all the space. You know, I know everything about farmer support. I'm an expert. And so this is allowing you to bring the voice as well. But again, you don't have to use that only from Mentimeter. Again, those questions, you can adapt them, you can translate them. In Indonesia, we translate them in local language, and you can adapt them to the local reality in terms of sustainability issues. You know, so if in Paraguay you have very particular sustainable issues that are related to the beef support system, you can adapt your questions. What we are giving you is a methodology to conduct an assessment, but there's a lot of flexibility in how you adapt those questions. All right, next slide, please. Well, we're pretty good on time. Wait, let's continue. If you want to write something more, I can answer some. We still have 4 or 5 minutes. Different stakeholders may have different perception on how to translate the scorecard. You mean in terms of language or what it means, the results of it?
The
Good way to The results, yeah. And so this is where the facilitation is very important. You know, for all these collaborative processes, facilitation is key. And this is where the facilitator come in and say, you know, there's different views. The government think we have a fantastic vision for the farmer support in Kambezi, but the cocoa farmers never seen any training and they don't see where it's going. So how do you generate a dialogue that is not conflictual? You know, it's not about finding consensus and aligning everything, but how to be comfortable with different views and, you know, gradually building trust and relationship in that forum. So facilitation is key for that. The wording of question is very important indeed. And so the way we present it is that's why the people who's leading that process at country level, the first thing he needs to do is to translate that to the understanding of the country. You know, some words don't mean anything, you know, like sustainability, when you translate it in some language, it doesn't mean anything. So you can adapt those questions. It's not a, you know, very strict process. And you can conduct the scorecard at a national or subnational level. It doesn't have to be only national. How do you deal with representativeness and what's the minimum of representative in each group? Well, I think there's lots of flexibility. Ideally, we want to be really multi-stakeholder. You need to have an equal participation and you have, you know, a balance of power into your forum. The reality is that most of the time, there's less representation at the level of the farmers rather than the government or the private sector. So you will always have to find the right balance, but you need to actively go and reach out to the different groups so that you have the right balance. We've had meeting where there's 9 private sector, 2 government and 1 farmer. This is not a good balance of stakeholders in the meeting. Is there an assessment in the scorecards about how people are working together? Yes, so in the enabling environment, so I cannot show you obviously today the 60 questions, but if you can see me, this is the scorecard. And there's the 60 questions there inside. It's presented like that. So you can do it also on paper. It doesn't have to be virtual. And in the enabling environment, you will see that on the enabling environment, there's something that is called partnership and linkages, which is all about the question you're asking, Lisa. How are you working together? Is there space for collaboration, but also is there incentives for people to collaborate and things like that? So this is part of the 60 questions. All right, let's continue the role play. Remember, you're a cocoa farmer or government, private sector. Next slide. We still have half an hour. I think we're good on time. If you need to go before, we're recording this so you can watch it. It's better than Netflix. I'm telling you, you can have a glass of wine, stop Netflix and just watch farmer support. Collective action plan. So imagine we are 2 months in the future. If you do system thinking, you need to use strategic foresights, future techniques. Simon got a glass of wine already. I'm very happy. And so we are 2 months in the future. We have now completed assessment stage. We've done a scorecard and we discussed the diagnostic study. And also we've done some maybe system mapping and other tools that help us to understand better the situation with cocoa in the Republic of Kambezi. And, you know, gradually we're building a shared understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of the different service provider. And we start exploring together what can be improved. We are starting also to have closer relationship and we're building trust along the way. You know, we're drinking wine together. And we are making jokes together. So we slowly building that trust that is so important. And we also understand better, by Lavinia, we also understand better to apply system thinking concepts to the particular case of cocoa production. And as I said, we have done, for example, a system mapping exercise. Overall, if we are successful and we had a good facilitator, we feel empowered to talk freely in a safe space. And that's essential for innovation and creativity. And so we are meeting again today. It's a 4th meeting together. And we're going to the next stage of what is proposed in the UNDP guidance. And basically, what we can do together, we're going to look at what we can do together to improve the situation. Can we build a collective action plan together that is building on the strength of the government, the private sector, civil society? What can we do collectively, you know? And so we're going to do that again through the forum. And this collective action plan, you can see a template just for information on the slide. It's not fixed. You know, we know that if you want to be thinking in systems, you need to be adaptive and experimental. So what you don't want is to develop for 2 years a plan that then is become obsolete because COVID-19 just appeared. You know, oh, great, we have a plan, but nobody's going to use it because the world has changed. But you know, you want to start creating what we can do collectively that is building on the strength of everybody and building on the needs of being adaptive and having a plan at the same time. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do that on Mural. So can you raise your hand if you use already Mural? If you can put the next slides, Matthias. Who has used Mural? Yeah. All right. So post-COVID or during COVID, we're all becoming experts. Aline is leaving. All right. So Matthias, I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to just explain a few things first, and then you can share the link with everybody, because I don't want you to start playing around with my nice post-its yet. Let me share my screen. All right, let's see. Can you see my screen? Yes? Again, we're doing that virtually because it's a workshop online, but you can obviously, so Mural, for those who don't know, is a virtual collaborative tool. It's like a whiteboard where you're going to put your post-its and work collaboratively on something. And I won't have time to explain you everything, how it works. You can see me moving the thing. Yes? And so the way we're going to build a collective action plan, we have like 20 minutes. Normally you're going to do that in 3 months, but we're going to do it in 20 minutes, is 3 steps. Before jumping right in the technical contents, I think you understand now that we're interested to look at the ways of working. So before talking about how we're going to improve the training to farmers, as a group, we're going to work on our ways of working, and I'm going to explain that. And then we're going to do a brainstorming on the content, the what, you know, what could be improved. And then if we have time, we can prioritize some of the ideas that we generate together as a group. So normally I've put enough post-its, but let's see. What you can do on Mural is you don't need to zoom in and out all the time. You can hover on a post-it and press X, and it's going to zoom in. So you can read here what I'm putting. Trust, learning. So I'm just pressing X. I put my mouse on it and I press X. If you want to write in a post-it, you just double click and you can type here and then press X. And then if you want to move, you press X and you go on the arrow and you can move your post-it here. If you want to put a photo, you know, a beautiful forest, for example, nice forests. I'm going to put my forest here, whatever. And then if you want to add a post-it, normally there's enough, but you can click here on the text, take a post-it and bring it to wherever we're working. All right, so Matthias, can you share the link for everybody to connect? And here, you see where I am. You can hide the cursors. Maybe Matthias, you can explain that. so that you don't see the cursors of everybody, because we're 20 people and it can be, yeah, you see here. So you can just click and put.
Yeah, when you join the whiteboard, when you join the mural, what we suggest you to do is to hover over your animal below at the bottom and click on hide cursors so you don't get distracted by other people's cursors going around.
Yeah, you see, I can see the visiting hippopotamus and etc. All right, so what we're gonna do is, so hide the cursors, don't do anything yet, stop playing around. Andrea, stop playing around. Bruno, I see you. All right, so because we're interested to build trust and relationships and collaborative mindsets, we're gonna look at the ways of working. And so you can use that worksheet to facilitate a conversation with the different members of the Farmer Support Forum around how do you wanna work and what do we expect from one another. And you do that before, you know, actually the technical content, or before doing a visioning exercise, etc. And so there's an outline here, somewhere here. Can you see my outline? For example, what do we value? You know, what qualities and behaviors? So we're in the Republic of Combesi, you're a cocoa farmer, a government and private sector and civil society. What qualities and behaviors are important to us as individuals, and which one are shared among us? So I've put a few, but take 1 or 2 minutes to think, what are those values? You know, I think we've put here transparency, empathy, learning. So what are the values for you to work collectively on sustainable cocoa in the Republic of Combesi? If you don't know how it works, feel free to write in chat box. Matthias can help you. Oh, I have a cocoa farmer. Nice. What qualities and behaviors are important to us as individuals? All right, so I can see, you know, let me put it bigger. I can see listening, honesty, respect, curiosity, integrity, accountability, etc. So make a pause. I know you want to write many post-its, but we need to go through the full circle. You know, often we don't have time to do that in meetings. You know, we go into a farmer support meeting and we go straight into the action. And by spending time working on the ways of working, and our values, that's how we create also more trust in the process. And so you can see there's different steps into those ways of working. We're not going to do them all. We're just going to do 3. So stop for 1 second with your cursors. And you can think about also how we're going to communicate. Don't write anything. So based on the values that you've defined in step 1, how do we want to communicate? When, how, with what channels? Then if you go collaborate, when will we show one another our work? How do we work together on ideas? What tools do we use? Oh, we want to keep a system thinking lens, or we want to deal with power. So we're going to do the next one, which is how do we measure work? So we're going to do a quick exercise. Again, we're in the Republic of Combesi. What success will look like for us in terms of collective actions to strengthen the farmer support system in Combesi? You know, how do we know we've reached success and we've strengthened a system? Is it a happy farmer, more money, what it is. So spend 2 minutes thinking about how can we measure work together. So you double click on a post-it to be able to write.
Nicholas, can you remind us what we care about in terms of, you said at the beginning, private sector cares about quality, etc.
Yeah, so the private sector is interested in the volume of cocoa and quality. The NGOs are interested in improving farmer livelihoods and the number of farmers trained. Mm-hmm. And the government is interested in increasing productivity and foreign exchange earnings.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and don't hesitate to write something that has been written already, because then we can see that many people have the same measure of success. So repetition is good here. I have a visiting sea lion, a visiting fish, visiting elephants. I love those cursors. Very nice. So I'm going to read a few. Keep writing. Better production, improve incomes, more money, the participation of farmers. Cocoa is the best in the world. International reputation, foreign exchange earnings, quantity of partnership created, the volume of cocoa, the communication has improved, we've reduced deforestation, etc., etc. So, thank you. Let's pause 1 second. So this is quite important because this is a way to see when you go into those conversations, because you have a misaligned interest, usually people tend to focus on the differences, what we do differently. And actually when you have visioning exercise, and visioning exercise not only with your mind, but also accessing all your senses, you will realize that there's much more commonalities than differences. And so by doing that, again, it's another way of building trust and aligning people, because everybody wants to improve livelihoods of cocoa farmers in the Republic of Kambezi, and the majority wants to protect forests and the ecosystems. Well, forests maybe not, but livelihoods is usually something that everybody can gather around, or increasing quality is usually something. So what is it that the private sector, the government, civil society wants, and cocoa farmers? And so maybe that's how you define your priorities. So you can do the same on how do we provide feedback to each other? How do we make decisions? Is it through consensus, and is there a designated decision maker? How do we recognize one another? How do we handle conflict? How do we prioritize? And this one is also an interesting one. We don't have time now, but this is something which is usually creating a lot of interesting response, is what commitments can we make to one another based on all this, based on those values, etc. How we are showing up differently as individuals in the Farmer Support Forum, and what behavior change can we all one another accountable to. So these are very important, because this is how you really create those deep relationships. So I know some of you are eager to move beyond the ways of working and go into the contents, because it's not only the how of farmer support, but also the what. So once you've done that exercise on the ways of working, you can move to brainstorming. And for example, this is just an example. Can you still see my screen? Is it moving? Yeah?
Yes.
So as a group in Cambesi, we've identified one priority for us. There's one here, which is about how might we strengthen existing advisory methods to create lasting improvements in productivity as well as social and environmental impact. You know, we've done the diagnostic study, we've done the scorecard, and we know advisory methods, as an example, is important for us. But here we're going to do a brainstorming. And what do we mean by brainstorming is that we don't want to have any judgment here. It's not like you're in a workshop where you're going to say something and then directly someone will tell you, no, that's not the way forward, or that's not good, we should do it like that. All the ideas are good. You know, go for volume. You can have wild ideas. This is how you bring innovation. You can be visual, whatever. And that's the key rules of the brainstorming. And the way the question is framed, how might we, is to bring about that collective visioning. You know, it's not only what I can do as private sector, or what I can do as government, is what we can do together. So you can think 2-3 minutes about how we can strengthen the advisory method in Cambesi so that we have, you know, increased productivity and more sustainable cocoa and reduce deforestation. What can we do together? All right, so you can leverage local approach to innovation, universal basic income for farmers. Oh, I like that one. You can do a national traceability system, use more of the technology solutions, etc. You can do joint committees for implementation, etc. All right, so you can see that because we go for volume, we might have, so take a minute to pause. Sorry, I'm aware I'm going a bit fast, but we have 10 minutes left. you know, you might create a wish list of things that are not at all realistic because we don't have enough money in the country or we don't have enough capacity. So basically you need to unpack all of those activities and proposals that the group came, and then together, so we're going to go to the next stage, you know, together you can start prioritizing. So don't do anything, I'm just going to show you how it works, but you know, I take one, don't move them yet. What is this one? So you can take any one, and then you realize, you can see, is it high importance, low importance? Is it feasible, not feasible? You know, and you do that prioritization exercise as a group, so you can see where you are. So this is something that obviously takes time to do. It's not a 2-hour exercise, and progressively you start digging deeper into your collective action. So we're going to stop here on the mural. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I know you want to continue doing it, but let's go back for having enough time to check out. And all right, next slide. If you can put the slides, Matthias. Raise your hand if you're still with me, not falling asleep. All right, so on these slides, basically it's what's written in the guidance, how you can build a collective action plan. You know, what type of meeting would be needed. You know, you could have a first meeting where you review the recommendation from the scorecard workshop, the background study, and you start doing a prioritization about what key elements you want to focus on. Is it the enabling environment? Is it the advisory method? Is it financing? Is it M&E? You know, and then you're going to have task force. Let's say we have 2 priorities. One is financing and one is advisory method. Then you create task force on those things. Then, you know, we propose here to have a specific financing task force because usually people have less experience with that, and you can bring financing experts to look at innovative revenue generation mechanisms. That could be the topic of a next webinar on farmer support. But this is just an example of how you could, you know, build collective action, you know, do a retreat, and et cetera, et cetera. But hopefully what I've managed to show today is how important, in addition to the technical content, is how important it is to create a safe space for developing innovative solutions collectively. You know, that's what we are interested about here. And so putting enough attention to the ways of working in addition to the technical content of farmer support. And how do you move gradually from stakeholders to seed holders, where your partners are gradually holding the seeds needed for a transformation and for change. So I like that, stakeholders and seed holders. I've listened to that in a workshop recently. So the guidance obviously has much more information about the technical content first, you know, like what is it, the enabling environment, what's, you know, training levels and sources of funding and system level performance, etc. So I encourage you to go through the thing. And I have 2-3 questions for you to check out together. Next slide, Matthias. So if you could write in the chat box your key, what did I write? Let's see. Your key insight from today. One thing you want to write. If your organization or you will be interested to apply such methodology, and in case of yes, where would that be? And also, because we are creating a farmer support group in the green commodities community moving forward, if there's also specific topics, specific contents that you want to discuss in the future, if you're interested to discuss in the future. So this is a bit the introductory webinar for that group. That's why we focus so much on the ways of working and what would you want to discuss a bit more in the future. So we have 5 minutes, so take your time. I'm sorry I had to speed you up on Mural and Mentimeter. Take your time to reflect. We obviously want country office and partners to use this approach in partnership with other approach. And we want to continue the discussion with you. And feel free to read what others are writing. Matthias, if you can save the chat after, also that will be useful. Yes, co-creation takes a lot of time. That's, yeah, you don't build a collective action plan in 20 minutes. People own the results if everyone contribute to the ideas. So you can see that it's very different than having an expert consultant saying this is what you need for the Republic of Combesi. Is how do you build what you need together? More in common than the differences. Yes, very true. And once you've agreed what are those 80% in common, then you can put that on the side and you just have 20% difference to discuss, you know? So it's much easier than to say we disagree completely. Separating the how and the what and putting them together as well. Because if you have only the ways of working without the technical contents, you're not going to achieve your objectives, and vice versa. If you only do the technical content, you might not as well achieve your objectives. Great insights. Specific content, a case study in Indonesia. Yes. Any one of you implementing or working with farmer support systems, how can we help you? In Colombia, yes. So jurisdictional dialogue. So this is applicable at subnational level. And Indonesia, we did it at the district level, actually. Not in the provincial level, but we pilot that, or we tested in a district. It was not so successful, I have to say, for a number of reasons, because we had like 2 weeks and no money to do a process that usually lasts 2 years, but we just wanted to test some of the thinking behind, and it was super useful in terms of learning to see how the cultural context is so important, and how, you know, the importance of being anonymous and things like that. So that was really good. We have 3 minutes left together. Any other countries? Peru, would that be useful for coffee, cocoa, palm oil? How to translate insights in one commodity to another, all right? Bring farmers and private sector in the next workshop. Yes, excellent idea. I can count on you, Sandra, for inviting them. All right, 1 more minute. It's my time to have a glass of wine. And feel free to share also the recording when Matthias will send it with some of your colleagues that are working on farmer support but they didn't attend. All right. Coffee and cocoa in Peru, perfect. Scale to operate the tool. Yes, we can help you decide that. All right, so we're coming to the end of the workshop. Thank you everyone for participating. It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry I had to rush in some of the mural exercise, but I think you got the point of how it could work. And yeah, I'm obviously available. You can contact me directly by email. If you want to discuss further about how to apply that in Peru, in Colombia, it's applicable to different commodities and the agricultural sector as a whole as well. So we're going to share the presentation PowerPoint with you and the video on system thinking, as well as the mural and the Mentimeter results. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice day, nice evening, nice afternoon.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.